Months pass since Kirito's defeat of the Administrator. Due to a power surge combined with Yu-Gi-Oh's death, the bond of friendship is broken, and so too is Kirito, now a husk of his former self. Alice takes him to their childhood village, though she's still branded a criminal, so the mayor, her father, turns them away. Now the two live in a cabin on the outskirts, only interacting with her sister and a group of woodcutters. One day, they ask Alice for help. She uses the power stored in the hard wood of Kirito's Gigacedar blade to cut down the inferior trees. All of a sudden, Kirito falls out of his wheelchair, grasping at the Northern Village young woodcutters who had taken Yu-Gi-Oh's sword from him. The remnants of pure friendship cause the catatonic Kirito to move more than he has in weeks. Back at the cabin, a dragon descends from the sky, an Integrity Knight riding on its back. Eldrie Synthesis 31 is surprised to find Alice, even more so when he notices Kirito, whom he admonishes for killing the Pontifex and throwing the kingdom into turmoil. He begs Alice to return with him. The inhabitants of the Dark Territory have begun raiding towns and villages, but she feels responsible for Kirito's safety and refuses, prompting Eldrie to depart, dissatisfied. That night, Kirito reacts once again. This time, however, Alice notices plumes of smoke in the direction of Ruid. The raids are closer to home than she thought. Alice dons her armor underneath a cloak and makes haste, riding her dragon into the fray, shocking the villagers upon her arrival. She attempts to evacuate them, but her father and others refuse to take orders from a criminal. She has no choice but to reveal her identity as an Integrity Knight. Dumbfounded, the villagers immediately change their tune and book it, leaving Alice to fend off the horde of goblins and orcs. Later, she sets off to find the Integrity Knights that Eldrie mentioned. Meanwhile, on the Ocean Turtle, a small team of mercenaries infiltrate the base, only to find the control room empty. Asuna and the Wrath employees hide out in the sub-control room. It's clear the men know about Project Alice. They must gain access to Alice's Fluctlight before the mercs do. Apparently, when the power was cut, at the same time Kirito was accessing the virtual console, his self-destructive thoughts after Yu-Gi-Oh's death were actualized. This somehow deactivated his Fluctlight's ego, apparently. It turns out that the mercenaries are GGO players that Kirito and co. fought before he was spirited away to the Underworld. The team's leader was hired off the books by the US government, who learned of Project Alice, and tasked him with recovering Alice's Fluctlight, presumably having a man on the inside. The mercenaries find themselves locked out of the sub-control room and the Fluctlights, so their tech genius figures the only way to extract the AI is by accessing a virtual console from inside the Underworld. Using his elite hacker skills, he discovers that each of the Dark Territory's denizens has a Fluctlight of their own, making them virtually identical to those in the human kingdom. He also notices the words "Final Load Test" popping up in the logs, unsure of what it is or whether it'll interfere with their plan. The plan is simple. Do a deep dive into the Underworld using admin accounts and extract Alice from the inside. Luckily, all the high-level Dark Territory accounts don't require a password. Meanwhile, Wrath's tech genius has the same uninspired plan. Apparently, if they can mend the bonds of friendship, they can repair the damage to Kirito's Fluctlight from its sheer power. Asuna, being a conduit of interpersonal energy, volunteers to dive into the Underworld to save Kirito and Alice. In Tokyo, Sinon is 1 kill away from winning the BOB in GGO, but the player Subtilizer catches up to her, rendering her sniper rifle useless in such close quarters. She's grabbed by the throat, and while the player strangles her, he ominously utters, "Your soul will be so sweet." She wakes with a start from the nightmare, still plagued by her PTSD. It turns out that Subtilizer is the leader of the mercenaries currently diving into the Underworld. As a kid, Gabriel Miller just so happened to be unnervingly obsessed with souls, seeming not to have one of his own. He yearned to find out where in the body souls dwell. Gabriel dives as Emperor Vecta, with a member of his team as a Dark Knight. As the Emperor, he declares war on the human empire with overwhelming support. His only request is to capture the Priestess of Light, Alice, alive. However, in private, Shayta, General of the Dark Knights, disparages the Emperor to his subordinate and lover. They were planning to make peace with the human realm. That evening, the woman disguises herself as a concubine and heads to the Emperor's quarters. She produces a knife, though the would-be executioner quickly becomes the executed. With his hands around her neck, Gabriel remembers the first time he relieved someone of their life, pulling an ice pick out of his childhood friend's ear. His soulless eyes watch what he believes to be the girl's soul leaving her forehead and floating towards the sky. His obsession with Alicia bleeds into the underworld as the life leaves the assassin. He becomes giddy, convinced that the light leaving her body is her soul. Finally, after so many years and tests, he's recreated the same feeling. He inhales the strange substance, seeing a vision from the woman's memory as he did with Alicia. Since Alice's Fluctlight is so important, it must taste even sweeter. The next day, Emperor Vecta addresses his subjects, revealing the woman's frozen head in a block of ice as a warning to anyone who would challenge his rule. Shayta, her lover, becomes furious, going naked Super Saiyan. He attacks, only to have his entire being sucked into the empty black hole of the Emperor's soul. Terrified, the army rallies with cries of "Long live the Emperor!" In the human empire, Alice discovers that the Eastern Gate will be destroyed at the last stage as it begins to crumble. Eldrie greets Alice as she arrives at the Eastern Gate encampment, but goes off on her when he notices Kirito. Bercoli shows up, telling him to relax. Suddenly, he stops and attacks Alice. Somehow, the attack never lands. It turns out Kirito has unconscious latent friend no jutsu. That night, Alice becomes confused while dwelling on her feelings for Kirito. When she leans in to kiss the catatonic swordsman, she's interrupted by Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh's old Padawans, Ronye and Tise, who become upset at the revelation of Yu-Gi-Oh's death and Kirito's condition. They promise to look after him during the battle. During the war meeting the following morning, the Integrity Knights plan to funnel the Dark Territories forces through the ravine where the Eastern Gate lies. It remains shrouded in darkness throughout the day, so they just have to absorb the energy from the deceased soldiers to render the enemy mages powerless. Usually, nobody would be able to accomplish such a task. The key is Alice, who somehow gained power akin to a god, for reasons. As the Eastern Gate falls with a flourish, both sides prepare for battle. Deus Elbert unleashes a torrent of his flaming arrows as the legions of goblins advance. Elsewhere, Eldrie is bypassed by goblins using smoke bombs, confusing the knight, as he's never seen anything like it. A soldier runs to warn the others of the incoming goblin forces, wondering where Integrity Knight Renly disappeared to. It turns out he turned tail and ran back to the supply corps. The hordes of giants are stopped in their tracks by Fanatio, who exudes a terrifying presence. That is, until their chief begins glitching out, his right eye glowing red as he breaks free from the pack, somehow rendering Fanatio frozen in place. He leaps into the air, but before his blow connects, one of Fanatio's knights blocks the attack, and her bones crack under the weight of the blow. The chief knocked away, Fanatio can move again, and swears vengeance. Wielding a beam extending to the heavens, she cuts the giant in half, ordering her troops to advance. Deus Elbert runs out of arrows, provoking the goblin chief to attack. The knight cuts down many of the chief's subordinates, but is overrun and pinned by two of the goblins. As the chief goes to attack, one of Deus Elbert's men distracts him, giving the Integrity Knight enough time to fire his sword like an arrow, which penetrates the goblin chief's defenses and wipes out his men. Alice hovers above the battlefield, observing the slaughter. She begins to absorb the spatial resources released upon death, creating a giant orb in the sky. The two kids who poisoned Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh in the cathedral, Linel and Fizel, fight their way back to the storage tents to find the catatonic swordsman and Renly the deserter. Before they make it back, Ronye and Tise stumble upon the green-haired knight. Suddenly, they see smoke outside of the tent. The mountain goblins have made their way through the ranks. Renly remembers his traumatic days in training, where he accidentally killed his best friend. Noticing Kirito trying to protect the girls, he grows some stones, saves them, and begins to unleash his double-winged blade's perfect weapon control. As he faces off against the Mountain Goblin's chief, his whole demeanor changes, and he makes quick work of him by slicing him in half vertically, which seems like the Integrity Knight's go-to method of dealing with pretty much everything. Linel and Fizel catch up to him, impressed that he actually did something. The Chancellor of the Dark Mages deploys the entirety of their minion forces, but she couldn't account for Broccoli's OP time-splitting sword, which wipes out every single one of them. Enraged, the Chancellor orders her mages to unleash their sacred arts, but they find themselves incapable of casting any magic. Alice has gathered all of the spatial resources in the area. She unleashes an incredibly strong energy beam and wipes out a large chunk of the enemy forces. Alice falls back, and Finatio orders the mages to deplete the spatial energy by healing their troops. Eldrie appears, ashamed of his failure to stop the mountain goblins from bypassing his ranks. Suddenly, the ogre chief appears. He reveals the return of Emperor Vecta and his goal to capture someone called the Priestess of Light, who he presumes is Alice, before Alice proceeds to cut him down. She relays the new information to Broccoli. They plan to split their ranks and draw the enemy away from the ravine. In the Dark Territory, Vecta learns that spatial resources are released upon death and tells the Chancellor to kill 3,000 troops to garner enough resources to launch a counterattack. She then orders the Orc Chief to sacrifice a large portion of his men. As Alice and Broccoli approach by air, they're taken by surprise as the enemy casts a sacred art. The Chancellor laughs as she unleashes the enormous power scavenged from the sacrificed orcs. Suddenly, Eldrie flies to the front and draws away the enemy's sacred art attack and tries to counter it with his own, losing his life in the process. It succeeds in pissing Alice off, and she rage raises the mages to the earth, announcing herself as the Priestess of Light. Vecta watches as a grin spreads across his face, his strange soul fetish confounding Alice with Alicia. He orders the Dark Knights and Pugilists to follow the decoys south and capture the Priestess of Light unharmed. The Pugilists catch up first. They only use hand-to-hand combat and refuse to be cut by any sword. Shayta, an Integrity Knight known for her quiet demeanor, volunteers to take them on solo. When one of the pugilists goes to punch her, she uses her needle-like sword to slice through their fist and up their arm. The knight calmly begins cutting down their forces. Renly and his forces lie in wait, ready to ambush. Unbeknownst to them, Visago, the mercenary, is on a stealth mission at the supply corps camp, picking them off one by one. The leader of the pugilists faces off against Shayta. Both are equally matched in their fighting prowess and love battle. But one of the pugilists interrupts as the rest of their forces catch up, and the knight escapes with her dragon. At the supply corps camp, Visago is met by Ronier and Tize, who try to defend the camp. Suddenly, a glowing figure appears in the sky. The girls recognize her as the goddess Stacia, who creates a giant rift between the armies and opens a pit below Visago. As he falls, something clicks, and he recognizes Asuna. Before diving, Wrath's tech genius warned Asuna that despite her ability to modify the terrain, she should stop if she gets a headache, which she does to avoid overloading her Fluctlight. She admits that she's not Lady Stacia and tells the girls she's looking for Kirito. It just so happens she's run into the people who know exactly where he is. Her voice alone is enough to make the catatonic swordsman try reaching out, tears streaming down his cheeks. When leaving the caravan, she's suddenly attacked by a jealous Alice. Broccoli steps in and refutes her claim that Asuna is a spy or heretic, explaining that she saved them. They decide to hold a meeting with the other knights, where Asuna tries to explain that she's from another world looking for Alice. But Alice isn't too happy with the idea of going to the real world with her. Asuna learns about the inhibitor in the right eye and code 871. Broccoli connects the dots and figures that Vecta is from the real world. Asuna is shocked to learn that the Dark Territory has high-level accounts. Alice reluctantly agrees to go with her, but not before they defeat the enemy and save the human empire. The next day, the Dark Knights and pugilists are ordered to cross the rift on ropes extending to the other side. On the Ocean Turtle, the mercenary tech genius syncs the Underworld's time 1-to-1 with the real world. He launches a patch and invites American VR MMO players to join a beta test in the Underworld to bolster the Dark Territory's defenses. Yui notices this and contacts Sinon and Lifa. They head to the Wrath facility in Tokyo, which contacts the Ocean Turtle and alerts them to the situation. Yui then informs Agil, Klein, and the others, who plan to transfer their player accounts from ALO to the Underworld. They're met with backlash when they try to rally other ALO players to join them. But after a passionate speech, everyone's convinced. In the Underworld, 20,000 American players descend from the sky in beams of red light as Level 1 Red Knights. Asuna attempts to erect rock walls to block them, but the Integrity Knights volunteer to hold them off. The Red Knights begin attacking everyone in sight, even the Dark Territory forces. The pugilist leader becomes infuriated when he notices Vecta dip out on his dragon. His right eye glows red and he brutally rips it out, only to rocket across the rift with flames shooting out of his feet. Asuna loses her cool and arm before the pugilist leader asks her to bridge the rift so his people can get across and help them fight the Red Knights. Alice tries to break free from the melee so she can attack from the top of a hill, until Vecta swoops in. His dragon snatches her and flies off. Since the Emperor has the Priestess of Light, the pugilist leader reckons they don't have to fight for him anymore and offers to hold off the American players. Shayta offers to join him, while the others follow Vecta. Back on the Ocean Turtle, the mercenary tech genius plans to deploy another 20,000 players to attack them. Vasago intends to join the fight, this time using his own special account. When the new players log on, Asuna and the others are surrounded. When it looks as though all hope is lost, a glowing figure appears in the sky, leveling the enemy forces with a powerful shot of her bow. Sinon apologizes for being late, and a teary-eyed Asuna embraces her. Thank you for sticking until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.